Cyberpunk 2077 is just around the corner in the grand scheme of things. Despite a couple of controversies with the game's view of gender and heavily augmented people that's leaving some folks, myself included, a teensy bit concerned, I think we're all still quite excited to wander about the neon-drenched streets of Night City, get really invested in the Robo Wrestling Championship, and flail about our arms what have big nasty knives and whips embedded in them, which is really cool. None of this would be possible, however, if it weren't for a certain man that's gradually skyrocketed into the public eye since CD Projekt announced Cyberpunk 2077 all the way back in 2012. That man is Mike Pondsmith, chairman of tabletop RPG publishers R. Talsorian Games and designer of Cyberpunk 2020. The RPS Gamescom gang managed to harangue Pondsmith into a corner of the show floor to ask him questions that we had. What happens next will shock you like a Mitsubishi taser in the hands of a private hire police SWAT unit. But first, thanks to Logitech G and the G432 7.1 surround sound gaming headset for sponsoring this video. To check out the tech behind the G432, click the link in the description. The first thing we wanted to know is, why CD Projekt Red?
First of all, you have to understand that Cyberpunk has been optioned since we first printed it. I mean, within that year we had people optioning it for video games. And the thing is, most of them missed the joke. They would reskin it as, something else, or they didn't really sense, why we had done what we done. Okay, and it's a very narrow window of style that has to happen to make this game work. Okay, so CDPR turned out to be essentially the perfect match. My wife, who's our business manager, came to me years and years ago and said, I've got a bunch of guys who want to do Cyberpunk in Polish. And I said, yeah, that'll be 5 copies. And I'm thinking, Poland, Iron Curtain, not happening, Turned out the 5 copies went to the guys at CDPR. I swear to God. And it's actually more than 5 copies. So basically, by the time I met them, my 2 questions were, 1, were they going to be able to technically do it? And I saw Witcher 2 and said, yeah, they can technically do it. I've worked on projects at Microsoft and some of the other studios I worked at that did not have this capability. There's some beautiful, beautiful tool sets in. But in addition, they were fans. And I walked off, and I was talking to them, and I walked to the building, and they're going, yes, we have to have Alt and Johnny doing this thing and that. And I'm going, my God, they are fans. They're like shipping Alt and Johnny, that's hardcore. So they liked it as much as we liked it, loved it, in fact. They had the capability, and they're really straightforward, honest guys. I like them. We describe them as being, they're a lot like us, only they speak Polish. And we don't, because we're not any good at languages.
Pondsmith has been involved pretty much from the start then. He's still pretty involved and occasionally flies over to Poland to consult with CD Projekt Red and try out anything new that they've put together, but not quite as much as they used to.
I go over less than I used to. I used to go over about 3 times a year, and now I go over maybe twice a year. It's evolved. When I first went over, it was just kind of meeting and getting to know the team. Then I had a lot of weekly meetings, several days a week, with the team via Skype, which was always funny because I'd be in my pajamas, literally. It's like, 6 in the morning, right? And I'd be talking by Skype, and they're all like getting ready to leave for the day. And so Mike, we were all gathered together. How come you don't have your camera on? You don't want to see me first thing in the morning? No, yeah. So we would discuss and organize things. The story team would come over. So twice, I believe, they came over where we just saw everybody and we went through storyboarding, talking about what was going to happen in the story and get things organized and all that. And then I started, going over a bit more. And then some of the team, particularly Adam, who's the story director and studio manager, came over, and we spent a marathon week and a half just going through game elements and what worked, what didn't, ideas and stuff like that. And then he took that all back and talked to people. And then I went over a month later and talked to everybody in the studio, and then everybody in the other studio. And the process has been ongoing. One reason I think is I'm not just licensing it, but because I worked in video games, I can actually offer constructive information. I won't ask them to do really dumb things because I'll know how dumb that is. It's like a discussion Adam I had a long time ago about the AV4s, the flying cars, where I said, before you step off into that, I worked on combat flight sim. I know what you're getting yourself into, and you don't want to do it like this. So I do bring something to the table more than just, a fun thing.
This relatively regular input into how Cyberpunk 2077's development progresses and in what direction CD Projekt Red takes it has led to a few changes with what the studio had originally designed for the game to keep things in line with the Cyberpunk universe and the way things in it should feel. One of those things is the guns.
Yeah, my favorite is the weapons. When I first saw the weapon stuff people sent over, there were all these shiny ray gun things, and I said, no. Cyberpunk weapons are large, black, lethal, dangerous things that look distinctly unfriendly, paramilitary, and they're not shiny, they're not happy, they look like, I'm here to kill you now. They should be things that make Darth Vader pee his pants. And so they went back, and I started seeing weapons like that. And then the next trip over, which was like about 3 months later, I walked in and they had a wall of weapons, about as long as this wall, that is basically one of those classic, like in spy movies, they open up the wall and there's all these guns in racks. They had that. And I'm going, ooh, shiny, And that was their reference point, was they started looking at real world weapons, which is one of the core elements of the 2020 universe. The weapons are realistic. What we do, we try to make as realistic as possible.
I adore tabletop role-playing games. So does RPS Deputy Editor Alice B, who was asking the questions at Gamescom. So obviously she prodded Pondsmith about Cyberpunk Red, a new edition of Cyberpunk Tabletop that looks to bridge the gap between 2020 and 2077. Specifically, she asked about how that gap is being bridged, and what it was like for Pondsmith to work with CD Projekt to make it.
Oh yeah. That I have a opposite number at CDPR. They've given me one guy, Patrick Mills, and Patrick is my go-to now because everybody's so busy, but I know Patrick, his job is to disseminate stuff. And one of the jobs we had to do was to coordinate the timelines. There's a real advantage, and many people miss this, in coordinating the timelines and making it one timeline. What that allows CD to do is to take advantage of a tremendous amount of lore that we built over the years. There's it's not close to about 100 books that we've done in that world. So we have a very, very broad depth, and they can mine it for whatever they want. But to do that means that we have to make it all come out at the end. So Patrick and my job are to look at things that have to happen way up here in 2077 versus back in 2020 or during the Red period, and say, okay, so these characters die. Yeah, but I need to have this character over here. Okay, so I didn't kill him, but you can have him. And also, this is what happens to this area. This is what happens to the world. Here's what the politics are in 2040, 2060, so forth. Okay, well, I want to have the president, leave by 2060, but I want to have this entire big war between Night City and, okay. So we coordinate those. And one of the nice things about it is that the fans like that a lot. We, my social media guy, Jay basically started a cycle called, a topic, I guess, called 365 Days of Cyberpunk, in which he tells a new lore piece about the 2020 universe, usually in context to 2077. And with first people went, what? It's 77, why are you doing this? But then they begin to realize that these things tie together. So they go, oh, so Johnny Silverhand had this background, he did this thing, or this other piece of information that we didn't know. And then we could start seeing things like, wow, I hope this gang is going to be in there, or I hope they're going to be able to show this, or are they going to have this backstory? Which, of course, gives CD more information that they can use later on as well.
So, 2020 was a tabletop RPG, and the work that bridges the gap between it and 2077 is also a tabletop RPG. But 2077 is a video game. We wanted to know if there were any challenges in adapting a tabletop game into a video game, and the differences between the two mediums when it comes to design.
Actually, it's interesting. Many years ago, I actually taught video game design at DigiPen, a school in Seattle area. And I remember explaining to my students the differences, because I'd worked in both. And the thing is that in a video game, you can show a lot of things. It's like a very broad canvas, but you can't go very deep, because there's only so much can be put together, so many plot threads, so many story threads, and so forth. But in a tabletop, it's as deep as the referee is willing to let it be, so you can get a tremendously deep picture of the world. And you have to make choices. You have to say, I'm willing to show this much of the world in a video game, or I'm going to give this much background, and I have to communicate that rapidly and clearly. In addition, you also need to find a way to shorthand and cover for the things that would be visible in a tabletop, mechanics, things like that.
One big change in Cyberpunk 2077 will be with how netrunning works. This isn't just to adapt to the medium of video games though, it's also because of the in-universe time jump and the advancement of technology.
Part of it is netrunning. When we did it, we were trying to simulate what everybody had heard about the idea of netrunning. And remember, this is at a time when like the most advanced net, so to speak, would have been CompuServe. Okay, very Stone Age. So at that time, the idea of the kind of architecture we have on our net now didn't exist. And I was fascinated to look at how the net would have developed in the 2020 universe. And I realized you wouldn't have had Apple Computer. You wouldn't have had hypercard stacks. You wouldn't have had many of the things that are foundational pieces of the internet we use. So it would be more like Usenet or DARPANet, much, much simpler, more code-based. And when we cut things back and restructured things in Red, we wanted to get it back to that simplicity. We wanted to basically get it back to the netrunner as part of the party. They have distinct jobs they have to do. They cannot sit on a couch and netrun from 5 miles away. Their time frames are now much closer to that of the party, and they're in the sharp end. So that's a lot of fun, because what happens is your netrunner now might be doing something really desperate, like to crack into a system or shut something down, and the rest of the party's overshooting, at whatever's coming to get him. But we have stuff coming in Red where there might be party threats, like cyberhounds or something, that are motivated by something that's actually in the net of that particular area. And the netrunner's got to kill the thing that's motivating the cyberhounds, while the party's fighting the cyberhounds from keeping them from eating the netrunner and themselves. So it's much more interactive now, and that was one of my writing and design goals. Put the guy in the middle of the heat.
Life pathing is something in a few tabletop RPGs where during character creation you map out a bunch of big events in your character's life. In some of them, like sci-fi RPG Traveller, you can even die in this part of the game, which is always hilariously brutal. It can be so much fun for some though that you'll get people who treat it as a game in and of itself. Because of the nature of video games, something like that isn't quite possible in 2077.
So there's Lifepaths, for example, in 77, but it's never going to be as complex as it would be in the original game, or even in Red, although we have a more simplified version of Red right now. And that is because nobody's going to, in a video game, spend 2 hours life pathing your character. But, I get people all the time writing me going, yeah, I did life path, and they'll do life paths of their characters till the cows come home, I made a character, next character, they like that. But it's not a mechanic that works in a video game.
So, life pathing in the traditional sense isn't quite doable, but with how much fun stuff from Cyberpunk 2020 is making its way into 2077, there will still be a lot of room for some diverse character builds, which potentially will include murderous clowns.
I'm not sure whether it's going to get explored or not, but my favorite is the Bozos. The Bozos are a poser gang, which means they're cosplay gangs, basically, and they're clowns. Now, this was before the Juggalos, before Insane Clown Posse. My wife came up with this, which makes me worry sometimes. They're a crazy clown gang that's sadistic and frightening. They're It from Stephen King, but in groups of 200 or 300. And somebody got on the boards and said, well, I hope they don't have any dumb gangs like the Bozos. I mean, clown gangs, that's dumb, So the next week, Jay posted about the Bozos. He described stuff Bozos did to people. Like the Bozo gets into the elevator with you and he puts on a scuba tank, and while you're standing there, the elevator doors close, the elevator gets about half a floor up, and then the elevator begins to fill with salt water. And it continues, and about the time you're trying to fight the Bozo basically climbs out of the top, and then bugs start falling into the ceiling. And then, and he just started describing all these horrible things that the Bozos do to you. Now you see why I worry about my wife, right? And people went, oh man. And one group said, wow, I hope we never meet them. Another group said, if I meet a Bozo anywhere in the game, I'm shooting him right there. And other people were saying, I want to play a Bozo. And so, now that gives CD a whole new possibility, and I don't know whether the Bozos are in there or not. I haven't seen everything by a long shot. There's a lot in this game. Staggering amount of stuff. But now they know that, people wouldn't mind seeing a bunch of really horrific killer clowns to make the Joker look like, a wimp.
That's the bulk of the in-depth stuff, but we also had a couple of quick-fire questions for Pondsmith, like whether he's played a lot of 2077 yet.
I've played some of it. Understand, when I see it, it's on the drawing boards. What you see is everybody compiles it. It's gone through, debugging cycles and a whole bit like that. I come in and an environment guy will go, hey, want to look around? Somebody will say, hey, want to go shoot things? So I see it piecemeal. And then a lot of times I'm surprised as the audience to see it all at once.
What with him being the original designer, we were curious if the world of Cyberpunk 2077 looked anything like how he imagined the Cyberpunk universe to be.
Oh yeah. It actually looks amazingly like that. And I think part of it is that, I've been involved in the process. So it's hard for, if they weren't going to listen to me, I would have known by now. But they obviously are listening. And we're doing it together, so it comes out to be remarkably close to what I originally saw.
We asked Pondsmith what his favourite build for V was, which led to a fun little aside about his daughter.
Right now, I haven't had a chance to play much with the Stealth Netrunner version. There's a couple others out there in the builds, I understand, that we haven't seen yet. I'm fascinated by the hard solo version of V, partially because the female version of it looks like my daughter. So I always can imagine, there's Dolan tearing a door open. Hey honey, come over here and rip the door off the walls. Dad!
And finally, perhaps the most important question of all. We're going to see Keanu Reeves as Johnny Silverhand, and for a while it was even rumoured that Lady Gaga would be making an appearance, though this was dispelled by CD Projekt Red. There are going to be other famous faces and voices in 2077 though, but will Maximum Mike himself be starring in the game?
I was voicing a character, and I actually did the voice in it, and he decided the character was too limited. So next thing I knew, he was cut or moved, and then they said, we have something else for you, but it's going to take a little time to organize it. So I don't entirely know what it is yet, I just know I'm supposed to be prepared for it, that's all. And I'm waiting for the script to show up, oh, wait, I do this? Oh.
It seems like Pondsmith is just as excited as everyone else to get his hands on Cyberpunk 2077, even with him being as involved as he is in putting it all together. The most important thing to take away from this discussion with him, though, is that if I don't get to be a bozo and murder for hire cops with an assortment of fucked up comedy weapons, then I'm going to be incredibly disappointed. Thanks again to Logitech G and the G432 7.1 surround sound gaming headset for sponsoring this video. Featuring 50mm audio drivers, a 6mm mic and DTS Headphone X 2.0 surround sound technology under the hood, the G432 headset immerses you in the action and ensures you'll always be heard for a complete gaming experience. Find out how to order yours by following the link in the description. Do you want to play a homicidal clown in Cyberpunk 2077? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this interview with Mike Pondsmith? Why not like the video and subscribe to Rock Paper Shotgun to see more stuff like it?
And remember to like and subscribe to Rock Paper Shotgun.
Thanks for watching and see you again soon.